And in terms of, writing and developing the concept in your head, something that I've always been curious about is because in the end of the day, the horror movie needs to be scary. It needs to be atmospheric. It needs to be eerie. It needs to evoke this sort of emotion within the viewer. So, as the creator of this concept, how do you make things scary? Like, do you utilize your own perception in terms of what would make you scared? Or do you sort of try to have an objective idea and try to do what you think would be scary for the viewer?
Well, I think early on, you're just trying to emulate things that you enjoyed. Me with the John Carpenter movies and the Wes Craven movies and, the pretty so-so horror movies of the 80s and early 90s and stuff. You see this certain type of kill scene and you're like, oh, that was neat. And you try to incorporate something similar into yours. And I think that's good because it's like being in a band and doing a cover song of a song or artist that you really like. You have to figure out the chord progression and arrangement and all that kind of stuff. And emulating those kind of scary scenes in a horror movie is very, very similar to where it's like, okay, I wonder how they did that. I could try it doing this and this and this. And, this is really, really one of the most elaborate and gory things that we ever did was in a movie called The Invitation. We buried an older woman in the ground up to her neck and ran her over with an industrial-sized snowblower.
Nice.
And it just, blew all over. It had like this big screen on the, a plastic on the front of it, and I had the nozzle turned at it, and we threw 10 pounds of ground deer meat and broken up styrofoam cups to look like the, bone and some pieces of wig and stuff like that. And, you're just carefully cutting back. You show her on, screaming, then you show the thing getting closer, then her closer screaming. And then all of a sudden there's like up on and the fun thing was figuring out how I wanted to do that. And what I did was I dug a giant hole, like a 6 foot by 6 foot square that was down about 3 feet. And we put her, she just sat comfortably in a chair, able to move and whatever. I took 2 giant pieces of 4x8, 2-inch thick foam, and I cut little notches, little half moon shaped notches on both pieces, and then slid it together around her neck, put a brown bath towel around her neck, and then put dirt everywhere around the towel so you didn't see anything.
Wow.
And that was how I was able to pull off, a pretty horrifying and grotesque scene in a scary movie. It was just challenging yourself. A lot of the other ones I've done, I've tried to come close to this movie or that movie, and then eventually you don't restrict yourself with that, or it's all in you anyways. And you just come up with stuff and say, can I actually do that? How would I do that? And the more money you get, you can hire people to figure that out for you. I always have to know if I could do it before I would trust somebody else to do it. I just like figuring that out.
That sounds as an essential point, really. Okay, so as a obviously, being the man behind the camera when it comes to this sort of movies and this sort of content, um, does this affect your ability to enjoy a horror movie? Like, does it still work for you, or by being a director and seeing a scene and you're more like analytically assessing it and be like, oh, I know how, in reality, how they made that happen? Or are there still movies that get you as a viewer?
There was probably a period where it was tough to enjoy. I enjoyed scary movies because I had already seen them. They were my favorites. Like, watching new ones for a little while was challenging because I was thinking, I know how they did that. I wonder how they did that, But it wasn't a long period. Like, eventually, and I should probably say relatively quickly, I was able to get back to just separating myself as a viewer and then, immersing myself in it. Now, I will say that the filmmaker has a harder job with me to keep me in there. But unless something happens that really takes me out of the moment or out of the movie because I couldn't go along with it or believe it, or I'm pretty good. I can enjoy movies again.
That's nice. That's nice. And what about the content that you have produced? Like, I'm curious, for example, you're on set and you have developed this very elaborated set, and people in makeup, and it's very atmospheric and it's very eerie. So, for example, when you're being on set, do you sort of get the feeling as a viewer that you want to invoke within the viewer? Or, for example, when you're watching the finished product, does it invoke some sort of emotion within you as a viewer rather than as a creator? Or, you being directly involved in it, it doesn't really work like that.
I've been pretty fortunate to where several of the projects I've been able to actually film in pretty creepy places. And I think that's been a lucky circumstance where you're able to keep the actors kind of engaged in being scared when you're in a scary place. Now, you don't want to make it dangerous. You don't want to, just turn the lights out and people are walking around bumping into stuff and, but where we shot Ophelia, it's a 180, 70-year-old mansion.
Wow.
And, it just feels like you can feel the history. You can feel there's something in the house. I never felt in danger. I never felt, like something was going to get me, but I did feel like, there was just something heavier than, a normal situation. And in a positive way, like I think anybody who believes in this stuff, there's many that don't, but anybody who believes in, potential paranoia stuff and, or paranormal stuff. And, you kind of get a feeling like when you go into an abandoned asylum, it's pretty heavy. Like, when I went to the one in southeastern Michigan, like, you walk in there and it's just heavy. Like, this, at one point, it was the largest asylum in the country, and it housed some of the worst of the worst. Wow. And it felt it felt, you could feel it.
Yeah.
So when you're in places like that, like this movie Acts of Death, we shot on Michigan State University campus in an old theater building. It's called the Fairchild Theater. And there was, all sorts of rumors of after-hour noises and things. And they allowed us to shoot there over Christmas break. And the type of movie that it was, we couldn't start shooting till it got dark. So we're there from, 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 5 in the morning every day. So from midnight to 5 in the morning, you start hearing some pretty interesting things in a, 150-year-old theater on, a very old campus. So whether it happened or didn't happen, it could have been the steam pipes. It could have been, the old building creaking, whatever it is, you can get yourself pretty fired up.
Yeah.
So as a team, a director and actors and crew and stuff, we use that to our advantage to, remain not laughing all the time. Keep yourself in, like, we still joked a lot. We still had a great time and all that stuff. But when the cameras are about to roll, you need to get there, and you need, so certain locations, whether they're cemeteries or, asylums or old houses with a history, you can create a vibe that you should be able to get onto the screen. Wow.
You actually, touched on the next question that I wanted to ask you as well, in terms of, the belief in supernatural, because I'm curious, whether you believe in that, whether you don't, because I imagine this is, quite a big part of what you do in the end of the day. Like, you have to have some sort of, approach towards the aspect that you want to portray.
Well, I believe in the supernatural, and I don't want to say, that it doesn't exist, or that, I feel like, especially when you go into places with history, I feel like there's a heaviness, there's a presence, there's something. And, as far as the extreme where you're talking, demonic possession and, I don't know how far, I like being scared by some of that stuff. That's the good part about going to a movie like The Nun or, some of those movies, is just, suspending your disbelief and being okay with, all right, give me what you got. And if they can pull it off and be not cheesy, I think they can utilize that, the fear of the unknown, and that's to me what a lot of the good paranormal stuff really is the fear of the unknown. And I feel like it doesn't just have to be the unknown of, is there something, is there a parallel universe, or is there an afterlife, or is there, ghosts traipsing around your house or whatever. I think you can also answer that question, or maybe even ask that question as a filmmaker, with light and shadow. Like, one of the things that I like about the Ophelia short film is what you don't see.
Yes.
Going through the house and, having a flashlight as the only source of light in the entire house. So as you're holding a camera and, whatever, you only see that spotted moment and then it's dark again. So did I just see something? Was something just there? And that's really the thing to explore, in my opinion, is not, a ghost running around, but just creating visual suspense of what you see and what you don't see, and noises, and kind of go that way, versus if you saw a ghost all the time, it probably wouldn't be scary anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And you've mentioned something that I very much relate to when it comes to what truly fascinates people with the horror genre. And this is I've always at least, explain it to myself like that is the fear of unknown, because I found that, always the scariest part in movies for me, just the little signs, the things that make you think that there's something, but you don't see it. And as you said, if you see the demon or the ghost all the time, it just stops being scary. But if it's just the noises, if it's just the shadows, that's what makes it very, I guess, fascinating, really.